Good morning. It's Monday, April 19th. And today I'm not so proud to tell you that we rank number one in several world categories. And in one particular case, we are clearly number one. And it's a disgrace when you look at this particular category, because it shows that there's something drastically wrong in our society. We rank number one in the category of incarcerations. That means that we have more people locked up in jails or prisons, I don't know if they count mental institutions in that category. But anyhow, we have more people locked away than any other country in the world. And in many cases, when these kinds of statistics are released, there's always some factor that they use to balance it, to claim that we're not number one. For instance, someone could say that we consume more chocolate than any other country on earth. But then somebody will come along and say, yeah, but you got 330 million people, so of course you consume more chocolate than somebody else. But there's an island in the Pacific that has 10,000 people, and they consume more chocolate per person than you do, because you only consume 5 chocolate bars per person, but because you have 330 million people, you are ahead of the world. There's a little island that consumes 10 chocolate bars per person. So therefore, they are number one. You are not number one. So you see that there are many ways of figuring out who is number one. But I am telling you, in the world, we are number one in putting people away. We are number one for incarcerating people. Because it doesn't matter which way you count it. We have over 2 million people in jails, in prisons in this country. And our per capita, that's the number of prisoners per 100,000 people, is at close to 700 people for every 100,000 people that live in this country are in jail. That's more than the next highest country, which is El Salvador. And they are almost 100 people less than us per 100,000. So it doesn't matter which way you want to look at it. We are clearly number one in a category that we should probably be ashamed of. Now, are we number one because we catch more people doing things that will put them in jail? Or are we number one because we have a criminal mentality that runs throughout the country? Or are we number one because we haven't put the right laws in place? Or maybe we're too finicky. Maybe if you drop a cigarette on the sidewalk, you end up in jail. There are many reasons why we could be number one. I haven't looked why we are number one. But I can tell you it wasn't always this way. It started in the mid-70s. That's when the rate of imprisonment in this country started to move up. And it's more than quadrupled during the next couple of decades. And I think part of the reason is because we've gotten tough on certain offenses. And I think a lot of those offenses were related to drugs and opioids. If you remember when Nelson Rockefeller was the governor of New York, and he had people put away for an ounce of marijuana. So I think a lot of what we are seeing is related to drugs. And I think that's proved because when people seem to end up in jail, many of them are addicted to something, alcohol or drugs. And then, of course, we have people who are destitute and desperate, and they rob. Our prison population is disproportionately minority and poorly educated. And we know for a fact that you need a good lawyer to beat some of these crimes. and the poor and uneducated cannot afford good lawyers. I am not saying that public defenders don't do the job or can't do the job, but public defenders probably have more cases than they can possibly handle. So I think that the entire prison system in this country is out of whack anyhow. Think of it, 2 million people, over 2 million people are incarcerated. Think of the impact of being incarcerated on one's family. Think of the fact that they have lost a breadwinner. Think of the fact that the charges might be something minor. Just take a look at the people who are imprisoned because they paid off some universities to get their students, their children into that school. And they got barely any sentence at all. Not that that's a heinous crime, but when you can afford to give somebody a bribe of $500,000, you can certainly afford to pay for a good attorney. So it's a disgrace that the U.S. is putting almost one adult out of every 100 adults in prison or jail. And that rate is 5 times higher, maybe even 10 times higher than other democracies. So in my mind, this is another major problem that we are facing in this country. And it probably won't be looked at for maybe 20 or 30 years because we have too many other problems to deal with. And maybe a lot of the people are in jail because they were involved in riots or something like that. So we've got a lot of upheaval in this country going on. And I don't know that we're fully equipped to deal with all of this. I doubt that there's anybody in our government who's really seriously looking at this situation. So it's a wonderful thing to be number one, but not to be number one in this particular category. And we should take a look at what was happening in the 60s and 70s when this incarceration mania started. Maybe we didn't have enough for the prison guards to do. Maybe the prisons were too empty. That's a crazy thought, I know. So I'm going to stop thinking about this right now. And I'm going to let you think about it. So I will say, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.